Time for a very exciting video for two reasons. One, it's another collaborative secret project video. A bunch of us that have been doing the Goodreads project and the book Live Up to This Hype project decided we would do summer awards. Because summer is about when a lot of shortlists come out. I mean, they start coming out in like the spring, throughout the summer, that sort of thing. And so you're going to find a whole bunch of different awards in that playlist. Link down below. I'll also link the Goodreads and the like April Fool's Day collaboration that we did. And for me, this was a choice, and why this video became one of my most anticipated projects that I've done in a while. So like, just face value, very excited to talk to you about the books that I'm going to talk to you about in this video. Might take me a while, might ramble, because I have a lot of quality stuff to say. Well, I think quality stuff to say about these books. But originally, when we thought of this idea, I had envisioned doing the Hugos, and that I would maybe have a couple books that I hadn't read yet, and it would be exciting and fun, because that's what I did last summer. I read the novellas and the novels to the point where I read some of my new favorite books, and I joined as a voter, and then this year, I have my reaction video, completely underwhelmed. I was just not feeling it. Like, the books that I hadn't read, I read one of them, and I was like, oh, that was so aggressively 3 stars. I cannot go down this route. And then the other books didn't even have audiobooks for me to, like, at least casually consume to get a sense of things. So I wasn't going to do that. I already read everything for the Ignite Awards, which I also have a video for. And the Nebula, it had 2 books, and one of them I was interested in, the other one I was like, maybe? But what I landed on was the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction, and this is the second year after this project. I definitely need to read the books on the first year list. And this is an award with an actual monetary prize, and it will go to one of these authors that will win, and they will get $25,000, and you can only win this award once, because it's meant to highlight new emerging authors or authors who could use more funding to pursue their craft, and it's all in homage to Ursula K. Le Guin. I think her son is the one that started and funded this award. I don't quite know how nominations work. I think people are invited to nominate, so I don't think it's open public nomination, but I don't know how that pool is selected and how that works, but they do seem to tailor it towards lesser known works, more optimistic sci-fi, more literary. In this stack, we have collections of short stories, we have a middle grade, we have speculative sci-fi, we have fantasy, we have retellings. It's really cool. And then there will be a jury that votes on the winner, and one of the people who was voting is Tochi Anibuchi. That's the only name I recognize, but like, I know him from Goliath, so like, that was really cool. And so I had read one of the books on this list, and I really liked that book, and any book that had that book on this list, I was like, yes, you're a list I want to pay attention to. And so I picked up the rest, and I read all of them, although I DNF'd one, and we'll talk about that first, and we'll go in order of my enjoyment. And yeah, in general, even when things didn't land for me, I was still excited to be pushed out of my comfort zone, because that's what I want from awards. It's like, I want to be pushed out of my comfort zone. I want to see what some people think is the best that maybe I don't agree with, or like I said, it makes me see new things, and that definitely happened here, and I have some surprises, and I have some new favorites, and yeah, let's just dive right in. So, starting with the DNF, and I'll show you how far I made it in. It's like a 200 to 300 page book, and I made it 111 pages in to Meet Us by the Roaring Sea. This takes place in Queens, and we follow a character in a near-future sci-fi interpretation of New York City. We have more AI presence than we do even now. Our main character actually is coding an AI, and it's maybe sort of an emergent life. And also, though, her mother just passed away, and she's a translator, and so she's deciding to translate this document that no one's ever translated. And it's about these women at a hospital, I believe in South India, and what they chose to do and what their life was like during this famine and wartime. And also at the same time, someone moves into the place where she and her mom lived, and then also this other person kind of comes in. Because this is a story, I think, about processing grief, it definitely works with that sort of stream of consciousness, detached, confusing, literary fiction style. And it didn't really work for me. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. This is a time where it didn't. Wouldn't mean I would steer you away from it. It's just, I also went on Goodreads and I was like, okay, well, if it ties together, I will push through how my brain is not functioning with this story and, you know, see a good ending. But it's kind of just about the meandering. I think it's about being just untethered and what happens in that space. And it was less about the sci-fi elements, which were the things that were intriguing me the most. And more about that interpersonal, like, journey in dealing with grief, which is fine. I just didn't like this interpretation, or it wasn't resonating with me. But the sci-fi world was really cool. Like, there's, like, this carbon sort of reading or score that you get with how you live. Like I said, there's more AI presence. It was a really interesting interesting, subtle world building for this largely literary novel. So DNF'd it, was not in the right headspace. I don't think I'll go back to it because I read another literary sci-fi in this list that we'll get to later that did really work for me, and I just think this is just not the right book for my brain. The next one is one that I finished, but probably my least favorite or least impactful. I still gave it 3 stars, and I'm still glad I read it, and that's Wolfish. This is a middle grade, and when I started reading it, I thought it would be a new favorite because I love the writing of this book. And I still love it. I just think it's a little long, and I'll show you. This is how long this is. It is a middle grade that's almost 400 pages. Now, granted, it has middle grade typing, so margins, but I felt like the story overstayed its welcome in the latter third of it. This is a retelling. I can't remember. It says in the beginning a Roman mythology retelling. We have kind of the theme is destiny, and is your destiny fixed? How much control do you have over destiny, and how much can you claim as your own? Which I do think is interesting for kids. I think this is a great dark fairy tale retelling for children. I just think it's a little long, but I did love the imagery, and it reminded me of when I used to read Brother Grimm stories when I was a middle grader. So me as a 12-year-old, even though this is long, I probably would have liked it because I liked reading books that I thought were long and accomplishments back then. And it's dark, but it's not so dark that I think it's unapproachable. It's just still heavy. There are consequences, and I think there are a lot of themes in this that probably would go over the head on a first reading, but it doesn't make it unapproachable. It doesn't make it a good story. There's a lot of tensions and stakes and plot beats that I think work for a middle grader, but it's also just elevated by the prose. And the prose is approachable, but also has a lot of rich vocabulary that I think is important for that age range. So I enjoyed it as an adult, and I think it's good for its intended age range. I just think it's a little long, just paced a little weirdly, and there was this lag, and I think I wanted it to wrap up 50 pages before it did. The next one is our first short story collection we're going to talk about, and that is Geometries of Belonging. And this is a Ukrainian author, I believe, also autistic. I don't know for sure if they are genderqueer or not, but the representation in this short story collection was phenomenal for autism representation and for trans identity and just the general otherness of it all, I guess is my best way of describing it. And I more appreciate this short story collection than I love it. But I want to love it, and I want to continue reading in the Birdverse. So these are all stories, poems that exist within the Birdverse, which is this world created by the author. There's a novella and a novel in it. I didn't read either of those. I just read these. A lot of these were actually published before those works anyways, and they're just stories set in this world. And the world building was so cool. The complex cultures and magic systems and how those are explored in each of these stories is incredible. The gender dynamics and what do you do with those gender dynamics when people don't conform to that gender, and when you have some cultures that do have that that pronoun and others that don't, and magic, if you have the magic or don't have the magic, and how it could or could not be tied to class depending on the culture. It was so interesting. I really enjoyed it. And it's complicated in a way that I remembered the Nine Fox Gambit books to be complicated. So also it just scratched an itch. And I really liked the writing style. There was one story that I remember that was this letter format, and it was very witty. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, you just have a lot of characters that are full fleshed out characters who you can just tell interact with the world differently in ways that I don't usually get to consume in fiction, and you get to see characters accept it, handle it wrong, maybe recover from handling it wrong, maybe just that's how they keep going. I really liked this short story collection. Like I said, I appreciate its project immensely, and it has me really curious to pick up the novella. And if I like the novella, I will go to the novel. But in terms of pure enjoyment, there were definitely some of the longer short stories in here that I felt were a bit too long. You either had poems, I think it was best when the short stories were 20 pages, but there were some short stories that were 60. Some of the longer ones did really work for me. I remember the first short story in this collection, I think it was 50 or 60 pages, floored me. I loved it. It was also my first experience in the world too. I was just oh, what is this place? So the act of discovery, exploration was really fun. So yeah, and I'm glad this had me pick it up because there's a new fantasy world I can explore, and it's so rich, it's so complicated, and I am here for it. I'm excited to see what else there is in store for me. This next one might be the biggest surprise on this list. I thought I was going to DNF this book. This was the sci-fi literary book that I mentioned previously, and I read the first 20 pages or so during one of the worst weeks of my month. But I just kind of thought, this is a little weird. It kind of starts from a young kid's perspective, and it's very untethered, very stream of conscious, very like, what's real, what's not real, and that's not my favorite place to be. Because at first I thought this was going to be more like magical realism. And then when we were driving back from Cleveland, I'm like, give it another 20 to 50 pages. If you still don't vibe with it, you're confident with your DNF. And I basically read 200 pages of that book on that car ride. Finished it yesterday, and it's not like a new favorite or anything, but Brother Alive, man, it's a weird book. It is very unique, and I have never read anything like it. And I'm just like, what did I just read? Where did it go? And I have some complaints, but I'm largely impressed with what it's done. So this is the story. It takes place in Staten Island initially, of these 3 brothers, and they're brothers by being raised together. They're all orphans, and they're raised by this man who owns this mosque in Staten Island, and they have a really odd upbringing, and our main character has this invisible friend, this brother, and at first you just think of it as just this invisible friend, this like childlike imagination, and then the story unfolds, and like you go from this slice of life with this really odd father figure, like he also has his weird tendencies, and then after the first part, which was my favorite part, I love the slice of lifeness. I love how vivid and off the page each of these brothers were, and the people that they interacted with, and the community. It was just so cool. I loved being here. And then part 2 is like revelations, and you're like, what? What is this? And then part 3 and 4 get a little bit weird, but even the characters are like, why are we doing what we're doing? We have lost our purpose. And the book kind of feels like it loses its purpose, but it feels intentional because that's exactly where the characters are at. And then the ending is just so macabre. I don't even know what the right word is, but I like the ending. It's not my favorite ending, and I do think the third part brought the book enjoyment down a smidge for me. But at the same time, it's this odd science fiction literary work, and I was telling a friend, I think this is my first contemporary sci-fi that is based, like, it's very connected to Islamic culture. I don't think I've ever read anything like that before, where it's just so deeply tied into it, and it's odd. There's, like, conversations on, like, utopian societies, there's this weird thing happening with biology, but it's also, like, presented as a magical realism element. It's interesting. And like I said, it's contemporary. Like these kids that I'm reading about are my age. They were born in 1990, so they're about my age. It's just wild. So highly recommend if you're just like, I am bored of everything. Because I also really liked this author's like writing style, how his voice came through. I would definitely read more. It depends on how long. I do think this was like almost too long. Let's see how long the book was. It's in hardback, like 320 pages. So I thought it was almost a smidge too long, especially for like how not decisive some of the ending was and things like that. But I would read more. It was very different. And if you like literary fiction sometimes like me, give it a shot. His writing style was like really pleasant. Now, those are all like my 3.5, low 4s, and 3s. The rest are like solid 4s and up. I think the next 2 are both just solid 4s. So the first one we'll talk about, and I'm just going to show you real quick because it is very short, and that is 10 Planets. This is a flash fiction short story collection. It's by a Mexican author. I think there's a translated nonfiction work by him. Unsure. But I buddy read this with a few people, and it was such a time. So flash fiction does not usually work for me. I can list on like one hand, I guess now 2 because of this collection, the number of flash fiction stories that have stayed with me, that work for me, that I think accomplish a complete and compelling thought in that amount of time. And this author did it. He had a little trilogy of flash fiction in here that I adored. I really loved that. And even when he had some of his longer stories, I did enjoy them. There was one that was obviously a homage to Ubik, which I'm like, sure, go for it. Sometimes they felt very ethereal and hard to be grounded in. Sometimes they were just witty. I liked the mix of sci-fi to speculative, and it was definitely more literary in that word choice, sentence structure was such a big part of this work. Sometimes to the point where like I could tell, oh, this sentence would have been better for me in Spanish. Like it's like that's not really the way that structure works in English, but also I think you do lose something if you change it too much. So I don't envy this translator. Like I truly don't. I think they did a phenomenal job because this author has different voices across different stories, and I think those were captured really well. And I think it also goes to the strength of this translator that the author is fluent in English, but does not choose to translate his own works to English. I think it takes a translator's skill to do that cross-language work, because it's so different thinking in different languages. Anyways, it was really interesting. Highly recommend if you're looking to try out flash fiction. This is a really strong form of that. It's not like everything was a hit, and there were definitely certain tendencies of the author that I started to notice where I'm just like, we're doing this again? You could explore this question in a more interesting way, but okay. But there were some fun ideas in here. Like, I think we had Don Quixote be made by aliens in one of them. Like, it's a fun time. And the other 4-star is Spear, and this was on the Nebula shortlist. So I was interested in it, and a bunch of people on YouTube have been really liking this book. I'm not an Arthurian retelling person. I watched The Sword and the Stone as a kid. I've read The Finnevar Tapestry by Guy Gavriel Kay, and whatever Charmed talked about, which obviously was super accurate and everything like that. So I know very little. In theory, maybe there's a love triangle. I honestly have no clue. And so I read this knowing I don't know what it's retelling, and I won't be able to tell. And so I just read it as it's on its own merits, as just a retelling of a very old English story. And I really liked it, and this actually makes me want to read more Arthurian things. Even though I know it gender flips things, it becomes more queer inclusive, I really liked it. This was also surprising because on a whim, like, it was always on my list of things to read, but I was supposed to be reading something else, but I wasn't really in the mood, and I was like, try a chapter or two of Spear. And I think the author narrates it. So I was listening while immersed in reading it and, like, doing laundry. I was just so transported. I was so into this. It made me want to play The Witcher again. I was just very into this medieval setting, which is hard. It is not a setting that I personally thrive in terms of my imagination. But this character story of finding where they belong and what they want to do with their life and just the journey they go on, I was very invested, and it was the right length for the story for me. So I think that was really impressive, because I still don't really know. I looked it up briefly to figure out what's going on. Like, I guess my other King Arthur stuff is like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So there were some things I noticed, but, like, again, is that very accurate? No. So Spear was definitely a fun surprise. And now we are in 5-star territory, to the point where I don't really know how to rate all of these, but we're gonna try. So first off, we'll do our last short story collection. This is Drinking from Graveyard Wells. Oh my goodness, was this one of the strongest collections I have read since I've read Ken Liu, Ted Chiang, Carmen Maria Machado, like, up there with them. So strong from the first story to the last. Obviously, you never have 100% hits in a collection, but, like, I don't think I had a story below 4 stars. This is a Zimbabwean author, and specifically really writing about either the Zimbabwean experience or the immigrant experience in the United States, and particularly with the female lens. And I really liked it. There's a slice of life story in here that's, like, my favorite. And everyone I buddy read this with didn't like that slice of life story. And I'm like, no, it's so good. It's like a play. It's like a play. I love this. So this author, what I can't even say more is you are invested in this character and the setting and the situation from, like, the 3rd line. It is so quick how quickly I care, even if I don't like the character. I'm just like, all right, I'm in. What's happening? There's, like, this vignette of flash fictions of these horrible, atrocious events. I think it's Plum Tree City or something like that. Masterful how it came together. It reminded me of, like, the Too Many Cooks video a little bit, where it's just like things circle back around, and I really loved reading that one. There was one that we had reread from Africa Risen, so there is one of these stories by this author in that collection. The first one is still one of the best ones. It's a really great collection. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It definitely is somewhere between contemporary, literary, and speculative, but it has so many speculative elements. Like, there are some straight up sci-fi stories. There are different, like, ghost elements in some of the stories. There are different civilizations that are made. There's a fable in here for children. It's great. And if you wanted to know more about Zimbabwe, you will definitely know more about Zimbabwe cultures and mythology by the time you get to the end of this collection. So that was phenomenal. The other one that I really like, oh man, I really like this one. This is, first of all, the cover. It's Arbor Reality. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. And it's a really small book. I'll show you. It's about this big. So it's like a novella probably, and, like, it's 112 pages. I had to buy a copy because they didn't have any in my library, which I don't mind because it's a stunning cover, and I will probably reread it because this is the climate sci-fi that I personally need in my soul at all times. Like, truly. So this is a story where it's a lot like, so a lot of people last year were reading, what was it called? How High We Go in the Dark. That one. And I read it too. It's about a pandemic triggered by a climate disaster, and you have these short story vignettes of time after that moment, and you learn about how society responds. And yeah, it's connected short stories. This is also connected vignettes and short stories, and it has to do, this takes place in Vancouver. I think the author is from Vancouver, or Vancouver Island. And there are wildfires, climate disaster. There are whole areas displaced. And the first section is about a university library figuring out how to save their books for the oncoming, like, Dark Age, very foundation. And then we keep being in this area. We keep seeing different people. It keeps being connected. You don't really have a main character, but you have this community that you're following, and you follow it for a couple generations. And then we get to the end of the story, and I love it so much. It's like, it doesn't shy away from what will be lost, but it also highlights what can be gained and how survival occurs. And I love that. And it was so great. I read this in a day. I just couldn't put it down. It was everything I wanted. I was obsessed. I was posting pictures on Instagram. I was telling everyone I knew. It was so freaking good. Like, that's one of my, like, highest, most accessible recommendations from this list is that novella. And if you, like me, sometimes feel like the world is on fire, which sometimes it is, I think this helps. I think it helps. And then the last one, if you know me, if you know my channel, you won't be surprised that this is still my favorite of this entire list and why I was interested in this list to begin with, and that is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, right behind me on the shelf. I mean, Arbor Reality, it came close, and there are recency biases, but when I remember the craft that went into The Spear Cuts Through Water, and the moments that I fist pumped, and the moments that my heart ached, and the beautiful, ethereal dream theater that I was transported to. And the different tenses and the point of views that were put into the story, and how it's just such an homage to traditional fantasy as we know it, but also infused with culture that doesn't usually get to be in the limelight. It's so good. And I want him to have the money because I need more books. I only have two, and they're two of my favorite books ever. And Simon Jimenez, he just can do no wrong, literally speaking, in my head. And I still don't know how to talk about this book. It's just an epic. It's a grand epic with so many little layers, and it's like, when I describe Vanished Birds by this author, I say it's like a French braid. At first you think you have all these disparate strands, but it comes together. Here, it's like, I don't even know. I don't know how to describe it. You start with the you, and you is not you. It's a character that is transported to this theater to see this story that's connected to his ancestors. And at first you think we're just observers, but then he gets thrown into the story at some point, and there are layers in which you get certain perspectives. It's very Greek in that there's this chorus of voices at times, and it's so good. It's just got all of these qualities, and I wish the audiobook was a bit better because I could see it being such a fantastic audiobook with all of these layers. That's the thing. It's just got layers on layers, and sometimes you go deep, and sometimes you go to the surface. And at the end of the day, though, it's about what's best for the country. It's about survival. It's about being true to yourself. I really love the characters in this book. I love the friendships and the bonds that are formed. I love the mythology that's explored. I don't like journey tales very often, but I loved this 5-day journey because that is the scope of the story. Is in this theater, we're being told this, I think it's 5 or 7 day journey of, I believe, this emperor to the other end of the land, and it's supposed to transport this goddess that they need to save, and it's so good. It's so good. It's definitely not for everyone. It's definitely dense. It's for sure a bit challenging, but it is beautiful, and I both really appreciate what it does, and I enjoyed it. Therefore, I believe it is the most deserving. I really would like it to win. But in general, this was a very, very solid stack of books. I am very happy I read them. I need to read what was, put on the short list last year, or at least the winner, just to see what I think of it. And let me know, have I made you interested in reading any of these books? If so, tell me which book down below. If you want to leave an emoji, just to let me know you're here, leave a tree or water for Arbor Reality or, Spear Cuts Through Water. And check out the other people down below in the playlist for all their award videos, and like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!